Did you know that the Chinese language used to be guarded from foreigners by the Qing emperors? During the early Qing dynasty, anyone who was caught teaching foreigners Chinese would be punished by death. But once the Chinese door was forced open, it was inevitable for all kinds of people to learn Chinese. Missionaries, traders, lettered men, and so on. Starting from that time till much later, Chinese reading and writing were taught at the same time of speaking and listening. It was very difficult, especially when you understand they were learning traditional characters and the classical format of writing. It was also a time before pinyin or zhuyin and also before simplified characters. We can only imagine how much time those people spent on learning Chinese. Fast forward to now. In the 1950s, a simple and easy phonetic system called pinyin using Roman letters was designed. Also, a simpler version of Chinese characters was introduced. The reason to introduce simplified characters at that time was to reduce illiteracy in China. Last but not least, in recent years, plenty of smartphone apps help people find out the meanings of a given word, bypassing the trouble of memorizing all the different radicals. Before, it was impossible to locate a character in a dictionary without the knowledge of radicals. Now, simply write the unknown characters on the smartphone or scan the characters in. Bang! The meaning is right there. Compared to the Qing dynasty, learning Chinese has never been easier. Still, even with all these developments, learning Chinese continues to be ranked as one of the most difficult languages in the world. This is especially true for people who have a job to do or a family to take care of. For these people, learning reading and writing at the same time of speaking and listening takes extra effort on every level and is nearly impossible if the target is to achieve a fairly comfortable degree of proficiency within a year or two. For this reason, many learning centers discard the characters altogether. They only teach students speaking through pinyin. As we discussed in the previous video, this is not a viable way. Very quickly, pinyin itself becomes a major obstacle. So the question is, what is the best way to learn Chinese characters? Many people have tried to find out the best answer. One approach is based on Chinese's pictorial origin. Students start learning Chinese characters with those ones which have an obvious correlation with the physical objects. For example, the advantage is that it is easy to remember the meaning of these characters. People who like drawing enjoy it even more. The problem is that less than 1% of total characters fall into this category, and most of them are not in active use. Even though we appreciate the origin and history of each character, it's simply not a very efficient way to learn Chinese characters. Another approach is based on the sheer number of Chinese characters. If students learn 1,000 characters in a short time, surely they can start reading children's books. Following this line of thought, many flashcards with English translations or books which look like dictionaries were printed. But, alas, at the end of these 1,000 characters, those determined students are only to be disappointed that they can recognize quite a lot of characters, but these characters are so disconnected that they barely yield any comprehensive meaning. The problem with this approach is that it neglects an essential characteristic of Chinese, that different combinations of characters create new meanings. For example, a sentence using very common characters like this one can be very hard to comprehend. The founder of MSL Master, April Zhang, also joined the club, trying to find the best way to learn Chinese characters. Following her 10-plus years of teaching and exploring, she came to two simple conclusions. What followed are two sets of textbooks, through which she presents a different way of learning Chinese characters. This method has proved to be very effective. Within 1 or 2 years, a beginner student with zero background in Chinese, who also has demanding tasks from work or life, a typical April's student, is able to achieve a fair proficiency in both speaking and reading within 1 or 2 years, given the student can make it to the class at least once a week and complete the required homework. The two conclusions, which are two principles acting as the theoretic guidelines of her textbooks, are: 1. For a beginner, speaking and listening should be taught separately but with an aim of putting them together sometime in the future, and speaking and listening should proceed before reading and writing. 2. Within the speaking knowledge of the students, select the most frequently used characters to create a favorable environment for students to focus on a fixed set of characters, and maximize the usage by creating new combinations in different contexts, hence to expand knowledge base. The first principle is self-explanatory. Like any child, learning speaking and listening precedes learning reading and writing. The second one demands a little explanation. There was a study done in Shanghai on the usage of Chinese characters. Researchers counted over 900,000 texts appearing in various books, periodicals, and other sources, and identified about 4,800 unique characters. The significant finding is that 400 most frequently used characters comprise 73.1% of the total text. And on the other end of the spectrum, the least frequently used 2,400 characters comprise a mere 2.5% of the total text. To put it simply, this research tells us some characters are more important than others. Therefore, April carefully selected 320 characters based on their frequency in Chinese and their place in Mandarin Express intro and basic levels, and wrote 6 levels of Chinese reading and writing books to create a co-enforcement relation, and also to pave the way to the character-based Mandarin Express pre-intermediate level A. Once students have a few hundred of characters they are very familiar with and are comfortable using, learning Chinese becomes more fun and more interesting.